Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.com. Welcome to episode 200. Yes, it is 200 episodes of the Longbox Review comic book podcast. And to celebrate episode 200 of the podcast, I decided months ago, as I was planning for this, to spotlight some comics from my collection that had reached that same milestone. In the meantime, other podcasts I listened to also reached this milestone and did something very similar. So congratulations to Just Another Fanboy, who spotlighted one of the choices I am going to talk about today, and probably much better, I'm sure. And also Gotham by Geeks, who spotlighted Batman, Detective Comics, and Legend of the Dark Knight. So apparently I'm just a hack by doing the same thing. Anyway, I'm still going forward with it. While this is the 200th numbered episode of the LBR podcast, the 200th episode of all the episodes in the feed was actually the retro review Adventure Comics number 459, which was episode 163, which I released back in March 2nd, 2019. And considering I have my so-called imprint shows in the Longbox Review feed, such as The Gutters, which is my audio journal, the Legion Project podcast with Peter Rios, and my Star Trek podcast, Center Seat, I am very pleased that both the 200th episode in the feed, which was that retro review, and this episode 200 are both about comic books in my collection. So I have, 10? Yeah, 6. Yeah, 10 total comic books in my collection that had reached 200 issues in their publication history. And so I read all of them. I read all 10 to evaluate which ones I wanted to do, which ones I wanted to spotlight here for this milestone episode. And those are the following. So World's Finest Comics, released in 1971. Superboy, starring the Legion of Superheroes, from 1974. The Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 1, from 1980. The Superman Family, also from 1980. Justice League of America, Volume 1, from 1982. The Brave and the Bold, Volume 1, from 1983. Daredevil, Volume 1, 1983 as well. Green Lantern Volume 2 from 1986. And John Constantine Hellblazer, or as I discovered in my comic database app, is just referred to as Hellblazer. But since they put the John Constantine name on the cover above Hellblazer, that's what I always called it. I don't know about you. Anyway, that came out in 2004. And then finally Wonder Woman Volume 2, also from 2004. So 2 from the 1970s, 6 from the 1980s, and 2 from 2004. So that kind of interesting how that kind of works out. Most of the comics reaching 200, at least the ones that I have, are from the 1980s. So I guess I should have looked this up when I was preparing for this episode, because now I wonder how many issue 200s are there out there, just generally speaking. Because, when you get up to 100 is kind of a big deal these days. But back when I first started getting into comics, reading comics, collecting comics, getting up to issue 200 was a pretty big deal. And then 300 was like, wow. In fact, I only think I have 2 of those. So maybe I'll do that for episode 300. I don't know. Anyway. Like I said, I read all of these, all 10 of these, and while most of them kind of made a celebration out of the milestone, it was either in story or, some sort of celebration within the story itself, or it was just kind of an editorial decree, which is, hey, we've reached 200, yay, but, it didn't really reflect that in the story. And in a couple, I found a similarity, which is why I chose Justice League of America and Amazing Spider-Man number 200 to discuss. And I wanted to discuss two of these because it is episode 200. So anyway, what is that similarity? Well, let's find out. All right, Justice League of America number 200, written by Jerry Conway, art by George Perez and Brett Breeding, colors by Carl Gafford, and that's the bookends and the bridge parts. Also chapters 8 through 10, and then the chapters 1 through 7 credits. I will note those with each chapter because there are the issue, which was released, cover dated March 1982, but it was on sale in December in 1981. It's 72 pages, which they sold then for $1.50. Anyway, I will, because it was 72 pages, there's lots of pages here to go through, and they did a bunch of other artists. But like I said, I will talk about the artists for those particular chapters as I get to them. Overall letters, however, are by John Costanza, except for chapter 7. And overall, it was edited by Len Wein, and Roy Thomas was a technical consultant. The, I guess, in-house solicitation or ad for this is the following: a special anniversary issue. The Justice League battles the Justice League as the 7 original JLA members fall prey to mind control. Like that's never happened before. It's up to the rest of the League to stop them from reassembling the Apollax meteorites. All right, so that's generally what this issue is about. We get, to start off with, we get this wonderful wraparound cover by George Perez, mostly depicting the character fights in the issue. And so you get, for example, on the front cover, you got Superman looks like he's about ready to throw Hawkman from over his head. Wonder Woman has Zatanna tied up in her lasso. The Flash has just knocked Elongated Man's head, which stretches across onto the back cover, which is really cool. I like that. And the Atom is punching Green Lantern here. And then on the back, you've got Batman leaping towards Green Arrow and Black Canary. Martian Manhunter is being blasted by Firestorm, and Aquaman and Red Tornado struggle with each other. And then behind them in the background is these wonderful single color line drawings done by Perez, depicting the actual scenes within the story. And so I won't describe them all, but one in particular is you see Phantom Stranger in the background, and he plays a minor role in this in the particular story. So, but that's the kind of design element that George Perez I had seen quite a bit as I was reading New Teen Titans. This is the first time, preparing for this episode, this is the first time that I have read Justice League of America number 200. And even though it's been in my collection for years, I got it for 99 cents at a Hastings store before that closed up in my area. And so as I was reading it, I was noticing, it's not in the, I mean, the condition is okay. But as I was reading it, and, of course, when I prepare for these things, I flip through, I read it multiple times, I go back to pages and reference things and just to verify all the information I have here is correct. And in doing so, I noticed that in the first few pages that the bindings seem to be coming apart. And this is because like I said, it's a 72-page book. It is square bound, and therefore it is glued together. And so I noticed that, like I said, the first few pages that seem to be coming apart, and then unfortunately, over the course of just a few readings, and I'm very careful. I don't squish my books down as I'm reading them. I hold them very carefully. I'm very careful with my books. But unfortunately, the cover came away from the rest of the pages, and so I've got this loose cover now, separated from the rest of the book, and it makes me so sad. So I need to look into how to reattach this cover. I'm not all that concerned about, value or anything like that. I just don't want the cover to come away when I read, if I flip through this again in 10 years. So I need to investigate how to reattach this cover without damaging the book. Anyway, so yeah, great cover by George Perez. I've seen this posted so many times, like on Twitter or just online, generally speaking. It's always included in various lists of, great JLA stories or things like that, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just go through the book, and I'm going to describe what's going on in the book for each part, and then provide some commentary. So I hope you enjoy. So this is the title of this issue is A League Divided. So the first 3 pages of this issue are a recap of the Justice League of America's origin as told in Justice League of America number 9. So this is the famous one where the various superheroes eventually team up to defeat the Apalaxians, who arrived in these meteors and are elemental creatures, I'll just say. But anyway, they came here to Earth to fight, to prove which one of them should lead their people, their homeworld, Apalax. Anyway, so the Justice Leaguers get together and defeat them, and here we are now, 199, right? 91 issues later. Doing math. Woo! Okay. Side note, however, so that is the secret origin of the Justice League of America. However, in Justice League of America number 144, as I was preparing for this, I was reading some stuff, and that led me to take a look at that issue. They revised the secret origin, which was that in, I guess, timeline continuity, Green Lantern wasn't Green Lantern at the time that the tale that secret origin should have occurred or did occur. I am not sure, but really what they were doing was doing more of an editorial explanation of how Green Lantern could be part of the story. Like I said, when he hadn't even debuted at the time the story was published, I guess. So I suppose they thought it was a fun idea to reconcile that continuity. But as far as I'm concerned, this is one of those examples where continuity kills the fun. Anyway, in this story, A League Divided, they appear to be ignoring that retcon. So I think that's a good thing. So like I said, they do the 3-page recap. There is, and basically, the Justice Leaguers are turned into wood creatures under the sway of the wood god, or whatever they called him. Anyway, they work together. Let's see, who was it? Aquaman is the first person to slams into Green Lantern, which exposes Green Lantern's ring, which Green Lantern then is able to wipe away the wood around Martian Manhunter's head, and he uses his super breath, his Martian breath. I wonder how that smells. Anyway, to push the Flash into Wonder Woman, moving Wonder Woman into the path of Green Lantern's ring, which exposes her and her lasso, and she's able to defeat the wood creature. And then they are able to go off and help Superman and Batman with the crystal creature. I think so. Anyway, there's this one panel showing Superman turning the crystal. Yeah, it says turned the crystalline alien into coal. So he uses his hands and super speed to and strength, I guess, to turn this crystalline entity into coal. So I don't know. The Superman's rub down of the alien is kind of gross, right? That's just ugh. Anyway. So the Leaguers take the meteors, and they decide, for some reason, I don't know why, they decide to bury them around the world. And then they also keep, it says here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. As for the surviving aliens, they were returned to their own world, Apalax, and the wooden creature's splinters were kept as a bizarre souvenir. So even Jerry Conway thinks that's bizarre, that they would keep the remains of their fallen enemy. Anyway, so we end this recap with this great group shot of the original 7 Justice Leaguers, again done by Perez and Brett Breeding. And so Here we get into the individual chapters. Like I said, they're drawn by different folks. Usually the artists that are more closely associated with the particular characters, or at least one of the characters in the chapter. So chapter 1 is Firestorm versus Martian Manhunter, with art by Pat Broderick and Terry Austin. So I remember Broderick on Firestorm. I don't remember how long he was associated with that character, but anyway, so here we go. Firestorm is on monitor duty when the Martian Manhunter bursts in, demanding to know where are Batman, Superman, the Flash, and who are you? They fight, with Martian Manhunter gaining the upper hand, and Firestorm sends out a triple priority signal to the League members. Elongated Man, Hawkman, Zatanna, Black Canary, Green Arrow, Atom, Red Tornado, and Snapper Carr eventually answer the call, and Green Arrow tells them that Martian Manhunter took one of the Apalaxian meteors and the others were buried around Earth. Quote, I figure something about those meteors has grabbed hold of the original members' minds, Green Arrow says. They decide to split up and investigate the burial sites to prevent the other Leaguers from retrieving the meteors. So this chapter opens up with this wonderful 2-page spread of the classic Justice League of America satellite. So we are talking about the satellite era of the Justice League, which is one of my favorites. Unfortunately, I am unfamiliar, really unfamiliar with this era of the Justice League. But reading this story, this issue, seeing the George Perez art, boy, really makes me want to read more, especially with Firestorm. I know they brought him in, obviously earlier than this, but he was kind of the young guy on the team. And I have read a few issues where they, with the team ups with the Justice Society of America, he is like making passes at Power Girl and stuff. So I kind of want to go back and read when Firestorm joined and just kind of see that evolution and how the League, or how he interacted with the other League members. And in this particular chapter, Professor Stein, I thought, sure surmises. So there's a point where he just blurts out, the Martian Manhunter seemed to react to your flaming hair. Let's burn more stuff around him. So I'm just like, well, that's one way to get into the story, I guess. Just cut through the middleman, so to speak. But it's not really shown. It's not shown in the art. So that kind of didn't work for me. Let's see here. There's also a point because I'm intrigued by this. There's this reveal that only Firestorm of the bunch of JLA members, the newer ones that actually get together, like I said, after Martian Manhunter leaves, knows that Red Tornado, and it's expressed explicitly here, that Red Tornado contains the soul of the Tornado Champion, which was something from issue 193. So again, things like this is like they, Conway or Len Wein, somebody is just throwing out these little tidbits of information to connect back to something earlier, and it just makes me want to go read it. That, and also, how does it play out with the rest of the team later when they find out about Red Tornado? Why is it a secret? Just these little these little plot points that they bring out, even in this anniversary 200 issue where we've got a lot of plot to get through, but yet they're throwing out these little tidbits. I love it. And it's also here that the events of issue 144, like I described earlier, seem to have been erased because Green Arrow, who made a big deal in that issue about the lie he was told about the origin of the Justice League, makes no comment about the League's first case. So anyway, I thought that was funny. Speaking of Green Arrow, his decision to bench Firestorm seems really dumb. So he leaves Firestorm with Snapper Carr to help coordinate, I guess, the Justice League, which is interesting because out of all the people that's assembled, except for maybe Snapper Carr, Green Arrow's not a member of the team. He has no standing on the team. So technically Firestorm outranks him, so to speak, and yet he's calling the shots. He's taken over and everybody's just kind of letting him. Even Hawkman, which I thought was weird. So anyway, little things I love about this time period of the Justice League. Anyway, so why bench Firestorm? Especially given Martian Manhunter's weakness to fire, as we were just told, not shown. Not to mention his power set. So why isn't Firestorm involved? Anyway, convenience of the plot. All right, moving on. Chapter 2, Aquaman versus Red Tornado, featuring, as I mentioned earlier, Phantom Stranger. Art is done by Jim Aparo and coloring by Tatiana Wood. So Aquaman discovers one of the meteors on an island in the Indian Ocean, but Red Tornado prevents him from getting it. Aquaman doesn't recognize Red Tornado, and they fight. Aquaman stuns Red Tornado and is about to depart with the meteor when Red Tornado returns for round 2. However, Phantom Stranger attacks Red Tornado with lightning, stunning him, and Aquaman is able to leave with the meteor. And I think he also said he's thinking as he's swimming away, he feels compelled to return the meteor to the Justice League of America's HQ outside of Metropolis, the old cave HQ. Phantom Stranger soliloquies, telling Red Tornado and us, I guess Red Tornado because he's unconscious, that defeating one Justice League member, quote, might lead to defeat for all. He then transports Red Tornado to the satellite. So Phantom Stranger is an odd addition to this, I gather, because given Aparo's stint on the Aquaman and Phantom Stranger series after that, so I have to wonder if he or maybe just Jerry Conway likes the character, but wanted to put those two characters together, I'm assuming it's Aparo, or like I said, maybe it's Conway on behalf of Aparo, knowing that he did that work. Put those two characters together, but they don't really. Those two characters don't interact. So I thought it was interesting. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Here we are told explicitly that Aquaman's memory has been, quote, wiped clean, and his thoughts have returned to a simpler time, and by extension, presumably, the other the original Justice Leaguers. So their behavior isn't the mystery of the story that Conway and company wants to be solved. It's at least by us anyway, the reader. So back to Phantom Stranger. What are those forces that he references that cannot be denied? Is it that all of the meteors need to be present to release the OG Leaguers from the influence they're under? Was this the only way this situation could play out? It seems really contrived, especially given that we don't see him again in the story. When I was reading this, and he says the thing, it sounds really ominous, I expected him to make a quick appearance at the end, or even as a bookend to the story, saying, "See, I was right," blah 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 blah, but he didn't. So it seemed like it was just more of an opportunity for Aparo to draw Phantom Stranger again, I guess. The Phantom Stranger has a history with the Justice League and is a member, or will he become a member? I don't know. I don't know if at this time in the publication history, if he has been a member or if he was invited. I think maybe he was just invited to be a member. And anyway, I'm sure some of you out there know much more about this than I do. Okay, Chapter 3, Zatanna versus Wonder Woman, with art by Dick Giordano and coloring by Adrian Roy. So Zatanna arrives on Themyscira and asks a blonde Hippolyta if she's seen Diana. Hippolyta tells her that Diana just arrived and went directly into the Temple of Athena. Zatanna prevents Wonder Woman from reaching the meteor that is there, and Wonder Woman doesn't recognize her. They fight, and then eventually Wonder Woman is able to leave with the meteor. So this is where with a previous fight, if Red Tornado had been human, the way that Aquaman attacked him, he could have very easily have drowned. Anyway, in this chapter, Wonder Woman not only throws this big stone slab at Zatanna, and had Zatanna not able to use her magic, it would have crushed her. It would have also crushed her mother. And there's a point where Diana says something about, "I don't recognize you either, mother," given her, I guess, helping Zatanna. I don't know. So anyway, by this point, by chapter 3 now, so the league, the old leagues, their inhibitions sure seem to be relaxed. So what's going on here? Is it the selfish intentions of the Apalaxians that who are controlling the Leaguers? Is that affecting them somehow? But that's not. I mean, that's only by inference. It's not evident on the page. But there's more of this later. It's like this is where our beloved superheroes, these gods of power and justice, boy, flip the switch just a little bit. I don't know, turn the dial maybe, and things could be very different. Is all I'm trying to say. Okay. All right, Chapter 4, Green Lantern versus the Atom. Gil Kane did the art with coloring by Anthony Tollin. The Atom arrives in Zimbabwe and hitches a ride with General Matabi, but Green Lantern hurls the jet carrying them 20 miles away. He then proceeds to dig up the meteor he buried there earlier. Atom had ejected from the jet and dives down to punch Green Lantern. He tries to reach him. Atom tries to reach him by talking to him, but Green Lantern does not recognize him and then traps him in a jar with his power ring. By the time the Atom is able to escape I like this little scene where he shrinks down to a subatomic level and is able to get out of the jar that doesn't have a bottom. It's one of those, again, plot contrivances. Had Green Lantern put him in a energy bottle or a bubble of some kind, he wouldn't have been able to do it, presumably. But he just put him in this bottomless jar and is able to go through the sands. So I don't know why he couldn't just dig himself out. But the subatomic thing is cool, right? So where was I? Oh, yeah. Green Lantern leaves with the meteor. Atom returns to the satellite to find Zatanna. Red Tornado has now recovered, and he tells the others that the original Leaguers' perception of them as enemies may be, quote, an advantage we may be unable to overcome. So, like I said, Atom hitches that ride with the general, and I don't think you'd see a Justice Leaguer asking some foreign dignitary for assistance, and they're like, whatever you need, Atom, let me personally fly you in my military jet. But this is why I love this part. I miss those old days of the DC heroes being recognized as heroes, and just nobody questions them. Nobody says like, are you really the Atom? Or, why are you bothering me? I got a country to run. Things like that. They just do it. It just is. And I thought it was interesting, maybe too much. I don't know. Is it too on the nose that the Atom uses a jet to get to Green Lantern? And also, for being a smart guy, Atom put too much faith in trying to reach Green Lantern. And then later, when he returns, he has, or I guess before he returns to them, he has the gall to assume that the other Justice Leaguers that he's teamed up with right now failed as he did. So I know he's right. That's just how the story goes, but it's just like the arrogant SOB, man. Okay, Chapter 5, Flash versus Elongated Man, with art by Carmine Infantino and Frank Giacoia. Is that how you say his name? Please let me know if I've mispronounced Frank's last name. In Italy, Elongated Man confronts the Flash, but Flash creates a localized quake with his vibratory powers, trapping EM in the crevice temporarily, in the crevice that was created temporarily. But Elongated Man's escape is for naught as the Flash knocks him unconscious and speeds off with a meteor. Elongated Man the Flash arrives at the old Justice League HQ 11 seconds later to find Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and Martian Manhunter. They discuss the changes in their HQ, Wonder Woman's costume, and their adversaries. Okay, if it only takes Flash 11 seconds to run from Italy to Metropolis across the Atlantic Ocean, how did Elongated Man get to Italy before Flash and be around long enough to don a disguise, as he did, and be in the Flash's path? Comic book logic. Okay. Not much to say about this. other than Infantino, whom I did not really care for in his later Flash run. I didn't really care for his art. I will say he is a master at at drawing the Flash, the vibrational depicting the vibration, Flash's vibrating body, the after images. He's a master at the Flash. I will give him that. Okay, Chapter 6, Green Arrow and Black Canary versus Batman. Batman's so bad that you need two of them, I guess. Art by Brian Bolland and coloring by Adrian Roy. Green Arrow has tagged along with Black Canary to the Carolina coast, concerned that she would face Batman alone. Batman attacks them, handcuffing Green Arrow, and Black Canary is knocked unconscious by a misfired rubber-tipped arrow from Green Arrow. Black Canary eventually, when she wakes up, frees Green Arrow, and they begin their search. They begin again their search for Batman, who we find out has just found the meteor. Black Canary then uses her canary cry, knocking Batman down, but they discover only Batman's cape and cowl. They too then return to the satellite. Meanwhile, Batman has joined his teammates in Metropolis, and they compare notes. Martian Manhunter notices that the meteors have started to glow. While this chapter is one of the earliest interior pages of art that Bolland did for DC, this is my first time seeing it, and boy, does Bolland not disappoint. His Green Arrow looks very Neil Adams-esque, but his Black Canary and Batman are recognizable as the Bolland style that I'm used to seeing. However, it's his Black Canary that is just astonishing. The determined, almost scowling face on the first page of this chapter, and later after Batman hands them their asses. To be fair, it was luck that knocked, and the text even mentions the lucky quality of this particular sequence. But it was luck that knocked Black Canary out of the conflict. Otherwise, it may have potentially ended differently. Anyway, she rubs her aching head, and that face is just exquisitely drawn. So to me, it looks like Bolland put a lot of effort into Black Canary's expressions, while Green Arrow is a pretty consistent, irritated man look. Batman's Batman. Let's see here. Seeing Green Arrow easily handcuffed by Batman, yelling his objection. He's basically, "You can't do this to me." And Batman's like, "I already have." It was priceless. I do have a problem with this sequence, though, with Batman figuring that they would arrive moments later, quote unquote, after he finds the meteor, and yet he's still able to set up a decoy cape and cowl on a dummy and escape with the meteor? And then later, he's shown with another cape and cowl? I mean, sure. I'm sure he either flew there in the Batjet or arrived in a Batboat. I don't know. But, so I'm sure he had a spare. But anyway, just, I enjoy this for the pre-crisis Bronze Age, I guess, the Bronze Aginess of it, but still, come on, there's a little issues with how this story is progressing in some points. Okay, Chapter 7, Hawkman versus Superman. Art by Joe Kubert, coloring by Tatiana Wood, and lettering by the Joe Kubert School. I thought that was interesting. Mr. Kubert gets his school students some lettering experience, I guess. Or maybe he did it and just put the Joe Kubert School. I don't know. All right, anyway, Hawkman travels to Greenland, arriving just in time to stop a Superman robot. He takes out another robot, and then a third arrives, only this time it's not a robot, it's Superman, who punches Hawkman into unconsciousness and Earth orbit. Superman, wrapped in a plasta-lead alloy, takes off with a meteor because it's kryptonite. The meteors are kryptonite. And shortly after, Hawkman is teleported to Rann. Adam Strange then contacts with Justice League and the satellite and sends Hawkman back to Earth outside of the satellite. Elongated Man stretches out into space to retrieve his colleague. At the old Justice League headquarters, Superman has joined his team, and they watch the assembled meteors continue to glow, and then the Apalaxians reemerge from the shells. The aliens recount how they implanted seed clones of themselves in the meteors as a backup plan and to, quote, impart a timed hypnotic suggestion in the minds of our Earth conquerors to force them to gather the meteors, allowing them to once again compete to become the next Apalaxian emperor. The Justice League launch into action but are easily defeated by the Apalaxians, who have decided to battle each other in groups. Later, the original Justice Leaguers awaken to discover the newer members have found them. With Snapper Carr at the satellite coordinating, they head to confront the alien invaders. All right, first the Hawkman stuff. Poor Hawkman. Hawkman alone against Superman, even if it's a Superman robot. Come on. Who thought that was a good idea? At least bring Firestorm, right? Because here we are. Okay. I will say, Hawkman, his head was in the game as far as his reasoning for his weapons, because he assumed, for some reason, that Superman, well, I guess it's a logical assumption because of the fact that the meteors are made of kryptonite or coated in kryptonite. I don't know. It's not clear. But that Superman would use a Superman robot to help retrieve them. So, that was good thinking on Hawkman's part. Side note: the Superman robots. As I read these things, I go here and go there for other information. The robots were out of commission at this time, apparently, in the Superman books because of pollution. So he couldn't use them anymore. Yet here they are. So maybe here we go. This is the no prize if I can cross comic book company streams. That's one reason perhaps why Hawkman is able to easily defeat the Superman robots, because they're not quite up to par because of this pollution. I don't know. All right, enough of that. Speaking of comic bookness, plastiled alloy wrap? So why doesn't Superman just wear that all the time whenever kryptonite's involved? Because later he is exposed to kryptonite a couple times, I think. Yeah, a couple times. And no plastiled alloy around him. So that's kind of dumb, Man of Tomorrow. All right. So like with the earlier adventures, Superman punches Hawkman into space. And there's a point in the text that says, he's starting to slowly fall back to Earth, which means he would have just burned up in the atmosphere. If not, he'd be dead, right? Dead. These original Leaguers are essentially killing their colleagues in slow, painful ways. If other things hadn't occurred and other people intervened. So that's just, ooh. Speaking of that, so in this story, Hawkman is saved by being transported to Rand because I guess a zeta beam, not a random zeta beam. I know the zeta beam because I'm not all that familiar with the Adam Strange stories. I know that he gets transported back and forth because of the zeta beam, and I know that the zeta beam doesn't always land on Earth in the same spot. So Hawkman was saved by a chance encounter with a zeta beam. Is how I took this. I just the just the randomness of this stuff is just amazing. All right, or maybe not randomness. It's not random because it was written, but the illogical nature of it, I guess. I don't know. So okay. So the raison d'etre of this issue is that the Wood King Apalaxian thought that they could be defeated by the, quote, mere Earthlings, so they concealed seed clones of themselves in the meteors and programmed meteors to emit a hypnotic suggestion in the league members to gather the clones when the stars, quote, shifted into a new cosmic pattern. Cosmic pattern. Let's see. When did this come out? 1980 something? I forget now. Hold on. Let's see here. 82. Okay, so this is again my no prize brain trying to fit this in. Is this like would this be like a precursor to Crisis? The new cosmic pattern because the antimatter cloud is starting off in the distance. I don't know. I'm just trying to make things work, folks. Anyway, the whole reason for this encounter, again, with the Apalaxians is that It's just so hokey, but greatly comic book hokiness. I love it. I love to make fun of it, but I love it. Okay, I also love the page turn to page 60. After the original Justice Leaguers have been defeated and they're all unconscious. A lot of unconsciousness in this book, I realize. Batman's eye slowly opens over a couple panels to see Green Arrow's this arrow with a pointed tip, like sharp pointed tip at his face. I just thought that was a really nice way to go from that previous scene to this one, and then of course unite the two groups of Justice Leaguers. And then there's a wonderful 2-page spread, not quite a full page, but a 2-page spread of George Perez drawing all of the Justice Leaguers coming, running or flying out of the cave. That was just gorgeous. So, that'd be something that would be great as a poster or something on your wall. All right, now we get into the rest of this is George Perez art. Chapter 8, Batman, Black Canary, Green Arrow, Hawkman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Zatanna arrive in Vermont to stop the Wood King, Crystal Creature, and Mercury Monster. Working as a team, of course, they are successful. Like I just said, Superman learned a lesson. He gets zapped by the kryptonite stare of the Stone God earlier when the original Justice Leaguers went up against the Apalaxians. And then, and this time when they again destroy the Wood King into splinters, I guess the Wood King's body is infused with kryptonite. Anyway, that helps take out, the most powerful member of the Justice League. So you should have kept that plastic lead shielding on. So all of the Apalaxians here, the Wood King, the Crystal Creature, and Mercury Monster, they're all seemingly destroyed. They're in pieces. How about that? That's maybe the best way to describe it. They're rubble. They're piles of Apalaxian detritus, I guess. All right, Chapter 9. Aquaman, Elongated Man, Flash, and Red Tornado arrive at an island off the Irish coast to confront the Glass Man and Fire Lord. Aquaman and Red Tornado dispose of each, respectively. Again, the ease at which the Justice Leaguers kill the Apalaxians is alarming. The Leaguers' morality is so objectionable. Red Tornado says something about them not being really alive. This thing was never alive and cannot die. Why? Why was it never alive? I mean, they were cloned. They are intelligent creatures from another world. You may as well be talking about Superman or Martian Manhunter. So, are they? Do you think they're? Which is ironic coming from Red Tornado, right? They are not alive and cannot die. Is it because they're aliens? They're clones of the aliens, or just animated inanimate objects? I don't understand his logic. Anyway, regardless, this is not a good look for the Justice League. If this were being, from the lens of today, this is not a good look. Like I said, if it got out to the public that the Leaguers just killed indiscriminately, and like I said before, when they were supposedly the original Leaguers were perhaps under the sway of the Apalaxians, they were almost killing their teammates, and now they're literally killing. Well, I mean, I guess not literally, because Red Tornado tells us they cannot die, which is, I think BS in this story. But anyway, this is very concerning to me how these superheroes, so-called superheroes, are behaving. Anyway, let's see here. Chapter 10, Adam, Firestorm, Green Lantern, and Martian Manhunter arrive in New York City, Firestorm's town, to deal with the Stone God and Golden Rock, which, of course, they do. Later, Green Lantern and Red Tornado deposit the remains of the aliens and their meteor shells onto the sun. or into the sun. At the satellite HQ, Aquaman asks John Jones, the Martian Manhunter, if he must leave, which he does. He needs to go back to New Mars and continue to help his people. And Sniper Carr also takes his leave of the League. Hawkman then asks Green Arrow to rejoin them, and after a bit of contemplation, he agrees. All right, so not to put too fine a point on it, or maybe I am, but Martian Manhunter tells Firestorm that, quote, "We acted as a team, and as a team we prevailed. Thus endeth the lesson." Of the issue, or one of the lessons, I guess. I think the original lesson is don't keep souvenirs, even if you bury them all around the planet. Yeah. So that reminds me. So they, at the beginning of the story, they kept the Wood King's splinters as a bizarre souvenir, as Conway put it. So does that mean that the Wood King could come back? Anyway, as far as the burial scene, I'll say, like any good murderer, the League disposes of the evidence by dumping the bodies of their defeated foes into the sun. Oof. And then Superman justifies this action by saying to the others, there might be another altercation in the future. So again, coming back to, they have the Wood King splinters, supposedly, or maybe they gathered them up and put them, I don't know. They didn't say. But now I kind of want to go through and did any of the Apalaxians appear later? Was there a sequel to the sequel? I wanted to talk about this because I really like the idea of this story, this milestone issue 200 of the Justice League of America, relating to the origin of the team, like I said earlier. It's told in that classic DC style where, or as Conway put it on the inside cover essay, the first 200, where it's inside front cover and inside back cover, where he talks about the history of the Justice League over 200 issues. He called it a tribute to the earliest Fox Sikowski tales, with members fighting each other, old against new. And I have always enjoyed those kind of stories, and also just the stories where they did this in the Golden Age with the Justice Society of America, where the members would get together and they'd go on a case, but they would split up, and we'd get these little short pieces of story where the pairings, or the small groups, the subgroups of the team, would have their adventure, and each one would have the adventure, and then they get back together at the end and they'd have a little laugh, and the story was over. So this issue evokes that for me too, but maybe the greatest draw of this whole thing is to see all the various artists take their turns at the characters. Given that most were already associated with some of those characters, like I said, Broderick on Firestorm, Giordano on Wonder Woman and Zatanna, Aparo on Aquaman and Phantom Stranger, Kane on Green Lantern and Adam, and Kubert on Hawkman. I just really enjoyed that, seeing all that. Of course, George Perez, like I said, wonderful artist. I did read that, I think this is on Tom Brevoort's Tumblr, where he talked about this issue. I think he said something about Neil Adams was supposed to have done the Batman chapter, but for some reason didn't or couldn't. But Boland was a very nice substitute, considering how much I praised his work earlier for his chapter. I also like, from a design standpoint, how each chapter gets a splash page showing each League member against the other League member. I thought that was a really nice touch, nice choice. All in all, this was it was fun to finally read this at last, even though my poor comic didn't survive the experience, or at least not holding intact. Anyway, it's classic DC Comics featuring the most iconic superheroes in the world. All right, speaking of an icon, Amazing Spider-Man number 200, written by Marv Wolfman, art by Keith Pollard, Jim Mooney, Glynis Wein, letters by John Costanza. Interesting. John certainly got around in terms of his lettering stuff. Cover by John Romita Sr. This is cover dated January 1980, but was on sale October 9th, 1979. It's 47 pages, which that seems odd. Why wasn't it 48? But sold for 75 cents. So there you go. It says here, the one you've been waiting for. This is the bullpen bulletins, the mighty page, the mighty Marvel checklist. This is the text from that for this issue. The one you've been waiting for, it's double-sized dynamite as Spider-Man battles the Burglar. And in my notes, I typed Burglar with a capital B because that's what he's referred to the entire time. So that becomes his nom de plume. The John Romita Sr. cover is simple but effective. It has an image of Spider-Man, which looks like a classic stock image by Romita of Spider-Man, just kind of swinging there in the middle. But then behind that image in shadow and gray tones is a sort of a recreation of something that occurred in Amazing Fantasy number 15 with Spider-Man on a wall menacing the burglar who is scared out of his wits below. So it's a very busy cover. I mean, comparatively, it's not as busy as the Justice League cover, but I like that one better. I'm not sure why. So, well, probably because it's George Paris. Anyway, and it's Justice League. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about DC Comics right now. I'm here to talk about Spider-Man. All right. So this issue is titled "The Spider and the Burglar," a sequel. So this comic also was written in chapters, and so I will do the same exact thing as I did for Justice League. Chapter 1, it's not actually explicitly titled, but there is a chapter 2 and so on. So this is chapter 1. We're told that in the previous issue that Mysterio injected Spider-Man with depressants, and Spider-Man announces he's lost his spider powers. Dazed, Spider-Man wanders the hall at the nursing home, rationalizing that maybe what Mysterio did to him was a good thing, until he remembers that his Aunt May was murdered by the villain. He vows to make Mysterio pay. On his way home, he berates himself for not recognizing Dr. Reinhardt, in the previous issues, as Mysterio, and like with the burglar he failed to stop, another person he's loved is dead. Meanwhile, a certain burglar, the burglar, escapes his bonds and plans to come to corner Peter Parker to help him become a billionaire. Later, Peter visits Aunt May's friend Anna Watson, asking her if she knows anything about the man who rented Aunt May's old apartment, which leads Peter to the rental agency where he discovers that man is none other than his uncle's killer. He returns home, vowing to hunt him down. Quote, "Only this time, I'll make sure he will never return again." Okay, for 47 pages, for a 47-page comic, these descriptions I wrote for Amazing Spider-Man are longer than the Justice League ones, interestingly enough. Okay, first off, a special notice on page 1 of this story informs us that Stan the Man Lee wrote one page of the story, and it challenges us to guess which page. Do you know which page it was? Don't look it up. Although I had to. I did read through it and tried to guess it. I will tell you, I guessed wrong. I will tell you that I thought it was page 8, which was Spider-Man's origin recap. So speaking of, we'll get to, for those who don't know, and you want to be surprised, I will reveal that at the right time. Okay, speaking of that origin recap on page 8, it gives us, like I said, a one-page synopsis of Spidey's origin. I really like how Pollard designed this to look like, Spidey's in the middle, and we get all these angular panels radiating out from the essentially the center of the page. So it's like a spider on his web. I thought that was really cool. And, we get that whole thing, gets bit, becomes Spider-Man, fails to stop the burglar, goes after the burglar, gets him arrested, and, learns the valuable lesson of with great power comes great responsibility. So, and then on the next page, this chapter ends with instantly transforming into his costume. So he picks up his costume in his hands and he's making that vow to, he will never return again. And then in the next panel, that Spider-Man swears, and he's in his costume, and he backhands the appliances on his dresser or whatever that is. Again, it's like one of those comic book tropes, shortcuts, if you will, where it's the whole gutters thing, right? It's like something happened in between the one panel where he's still Peter, and not something he changes. But, the way that the dialogue goes, it seems like it's said almost immediately. And so his transformation to Spider-Man seems weird because of that. But, that's comic books. We just kind of go with it, right? All right, Chapter 2, Less Spider Than Man. Peter is piecing together the reason behind his uncle's murder, but he needs access to some videotape records owned by a, quote, major television network. Not having an appointment and being turned away, he decides to break and enter as Spider-Man. Spidey nearly falls to his death because he doesn't have his powers and ends up slowly climbing his web line across the two buildings. Reaching the other side, he admits, "I've been taking my spider powers for granted." He eventually finds the tape of the TV special he was looking for. Later, he hears someone calling for help, and Peter, not as Spider-Man, but as Peter, because he changed, exits the viewing room to find a man running from a security guard. Peter stops the purse, we discover is a purse snatcher, and also he discovers the guard is the same man who asked Spider-Man for help all those years ago. Peter contemplates this serendipitous event as he arrives home. He also discovers that his uncle's murderer is inside, pointing his gun at him. He tells Peter, quote, "You're going to help me, or I'm going to do to you what I did to your interfering uncle." So, in regards to him breaking and entering, he must be so consumed, Peter must be so consumed by his emotions over the death of his Aunt May, because he never considers that he still doesn't have his powers here. He just acts. He shoots his web line and then starts to walk across it tightrope style like he always does, Spider-Man always does, but he nearly falls and dies. Fortunately, supposedly his web slinging and whatnot has built up his muscles, even though he doesn't have his super strength anymore. Anyway, so not to mention that he doesn't even think about just breaking and entering, just committing a crime because he doesn't have an appointment. He can't wait. He can't get the appointment and get that stuff. So anyway, we all make rash decisions when we are hurting, I suppose. He also spends some time searching for the videotape and then decides it would be a good idea to remove his costume, just in case somebody comes in or something. So again, the timing here. I can understand why, however, I can understand why Wolfman decided not to have Spider-Man stop the thief as opposed to Peter, because that'd be, too repetitive of the origin, but when that made a nice kind of symmetry. And I also would have liked some sort of exchange between Peter and the security guard. We don't get that at all. It'd be a wonderful moment between the two of them. But I think they wanted to, want to keep Peter in his headspace and not start reconciling Peter's past here, because they want to do that later in the story. And then also, for the end of the chapter, how lucky was it that the burglar delivered himself to Peter, so Peter didn't have to go hunt him down as he vowed to earlier. Oh, comic book plotting. All right, Chapter 3, Let the Burglar Beware. Enraged, Peter rushes the startled burglar, knocking the gun from his hand and punching him onto and over a desk. Peter begins choking the burglar, but the burglar is able to reach his gun and knock Peter out. Peter awakens later in the same abandoned warehouse where Spider-Man confronted the burglar years ago. The burglar needs Peter's help to find Dutch Malone's hidden treasure. Malone was a Prohibitionist-era bootlegger who in the 1930s lived in the same house as the Parkers and was where he hid his fortune. The burglar shared a jail cell with Malone and came to find the money at the Parker house, which is how Ben was murdered. The burglar demands that Peter tell him where the treasure is or else. Peter goads him, quote, "Just like you killed my aunt for not telling you?" The burglar laughs and tells Peter that he didn't kill May. That was Reinhardt/Mysterio. The burglar then leaves, telling Peter that, quote, "I know what's going to make you talk," and he leaves. Peter breaks free of his bonds and tears off his shirt, declaring, "When Spider-Man gets mad, nothing gets in my way." All right, I swear some writers write comic book dialogue as if they are paid by the word. There was a lot of explanation for what we are being shown in that opening scene of the chapter. I'm not sure why we need to be told it in the text and see it. I hate that about comics, so I'm not sure why. Wolfman's a better writer than that. He didn't need to do that. Anyway, Pollard and Mooney do a great job at showing the utter surprise on that burglar's face when Peter jumps him. Also, the warehouse exterior is drawn almost exactly as it was drawn in Amazing Fantasy number 15. I thought that was a really nice touch. Right before Peter breaks free of his bonds, he mentions the frayed rope binding him, but the way that they show him breaking free, including the chair being broken and how he shreds his outer shirt to change, I don't think is just anger-fueled strength here. It seems to me like his powers are returning at this point. He just doesn't realize it. I'm not sure. It's unclear in the way that the things are being displayed, whether or not his powers are returning, but I seem to think so. But maybe that's the point. Keep him so angry during much of the story that he doesn't realize the powers are returning, which would then shorten the story because he would easily take care of the burglar as he did all those years ago. I think he even makes note of that later in the story. All right, Chapter 4, Murder Most Foul. As Spider-Man tails the burglar on the top of a bus, he recounts his childhood and his loving aunt and uncle, as well as his regret at not stopping the burglar all those years ago. The bus deposits the burglar at the nursing home. They have a brief altercation outside and then again inside, with the burglar being able to shoot Spider-Man in his side. The burglar leaves thinking he's killed Spider-Man. However, he was just unconscious. Spider-Man pushes through the pain to go after the burglar once more. Again, Spider-Man leaps between two buildings as he's following the burglar. And then when he goes into the nursing home basement, he kicks the door off its hinges. The whole door. And he still doesn't think he's getting his powers back? To be fair, his spider sense isn't working because he makes note of that here. So who really knows, right? Total tangent here, but how many times have I read this set of words, this title, Murder Most Foul, in a comic book? I mean, it's gotta be several dozens maybe over the years. It's a very common thing. So I'm really curious where this first appeared in superhero comic books. And maybe even how many times it's used. It's impossible to say, but interesting to muse about. Okay, here we go. Getting close to the end. Chapter 5, the final confrontation. I mentioned earlier how the descriptions of the Spider-Man issue were longer comparatively. This is the longest, so bear with me. The burglar returns to the warehouse with a very much alive Aunt May to use as leverage on Peter. He calls out to Peter, whom he thinks is hiding nearby, and tells May when he's done with Peter, he will kill him like he did her husband. May recalls that eventful night and demands to know why the burglar is back. The burglar explains that Reinhardt, a.k.a. Mysterio, was running some, quote, some old age home racket, and they had been working together to get Malone's money. Spider-Man arrives and the two struggle. Spider-Man asks May to trust him. He needs her to trust him. The burglar shoots at Spider-Man and misses, and they continue their fight. The burglar tells Spider-Man he feels weak. "I got a bum ticka," and gets the upper hand for a moment. Spider-Man rallies and then reveals to the burglar that he is Peter Parker. Now fearing for his life, the burglar tries to escape, complaining about his chest, but Spider-Man seems everywhere. Spider-Man finally corners him, telling him that it may be the end of Spider-Man, but he no longer wants to rip you apart limb by limb, and will turn him over to the police. The burglar doesn't believe Spider-Man, and his heart finally gives out. Spider-Man pulls the fire alarm to bring the authorities, and as he walks back to Aunt May, realizes the man's death doesn't even the score. May asks him if he'll hurt her, and he tells her, quote, "I've known for years that you thought I was some sort of a monster, but please believe me, I'm not. I want to be your friend." He offers her his hand, and she takes it. Later, at the hospital, Peter and May talk, and she tells him that she and Ben found the money, but it had been eaten by silverfish. Peter says, "Then all that horror, it was all for nothing?" May responds, "Not for nothing. It made me stronger. It brought us together more than before. Love is the strongest medicine of all." So, okay. If May was tied up where the burglar was at the beginning of the story, which that seems to be the implication here, why did he leave without her and go after Peter? Or was she somehow incapacitated regardless, and that was shown in the previous issue? Or is this just a plot contrivance to fill pages and give us the big reveal about May later? Which is kind of what I'm thinking. Doesn't make sense. Finally, on page 37, Peter begins to realize his powers are returning. Page 37 out of 47. And then the scene where Spider-Man's pursuing the burglar and cornering him. He uses his belt buckle spider light, which I love that thing. I think I first encountered that in Amazing Spider-Man 188 when Spider-Man went up against Jigsaw. Pretty sure. And with a very similar result. It spooked the hell out of Jigsaw too. So I don't know what it is about that light, but anyway, that helps to heighten the burglar's anxiety. Speaking of Peter revealing his identity, reminds me of when Batman did the same thing to Joe Chill with similar results. So the whole, I don't know, this whole thing is very much like Wolfman was like, that whole story with Batman and Joe Chill, that's a good way to tell this one too. So, cribbing off DC. Okay. And then I thought it was touching when May, pardon the pun, when May took Spider-Man's hand. That page is finally turned in that relationship, so to speak, I guess. So I thought that was a nice resolution to that. Okay, finally, the end page, epilogue, resolutions. Spider-Man swings over the city, contemplating the times he's considered quitting being Spider-Man, but now he knows the truth as to why it never stuck. His, quote, longing for justice and loathing for cruelty and crime. I swear to be worthy of my power and grateful for the rest of my life. So heads up, heroes. Spidey's here to stay. Okay, again, it's Batman. It's Batman and his oath. But I see what they're after with this pledge. And I have to wonder, how long was it before Peter had another crisis of faith? Because he seems to have them every 100 issues or so. I guess, I don't know. Maybe it's every 50. Thinking of that iconic cover with Peter walking out of this alley after he's thrown his Spider-Man costume in the trash can. I don't remember what issue that is, but you do. Some of you do, I know. And so let me know what issue number that was, so I don't have to go look it up. Okay, so we got through the whole issue, all 47 pages. Did you guess? Did you guess which page was Stan Lee's page? Well, it was this one. It was the final page, because it was one page that he could write very easily. So, but like I said, I thought it was page 8, the recap, because it sounded like Stan Lee's voice in the writing. But I could totally see it in this last page too. So, okay. Overall thoughts, again, wonderful Bronze Age fun with Spider-Man here this time. So over the top in spots, but so spot on in Spider-Man melodrama. I mean, it's just, this is classic Spider-Man. And also taking the opportunity to connect this to Spider-Man's origin with the burglar and Uncle Ben was a great way to celebrate the past and reinvigorate the character for the future at that time. Art-wise, I liked how almost every chapter began and ended with a half splash page thereabouts. It kind of varied in size. But where they didn't, it made for, perhaps more perhaps smaller, more poignant moments. So I like that too. There's only one complete splash page in the story on page 39 when Spider-Man clocks the burglar in the warehouse proclaiming, quote, "This is the day I atone for all of Spider-Man's sins." It was just a well-constructed and dynamic page, a very classic Spider-Man fight with an adversary, done very well by Pollard and the other artists. So to tie these two together, there were some similarities in the construction, the production of the stories between Justice League of America and Amazing Spider-Man. But it was really the reason I chose these two over the others was that connection to its past, to their origins, which I thought was really interesting. So that's why you got these two instead of all the other 8, which I will briefly talk about now. I'm breaking my rule for this episode. All right. World's Finest Comics. I got this because it has Robin teaming up, so to speak, with Superman. I almost said Spider-Man. It's an alien kidnapping Superman plot, but it's Robin saving the day. I really like that. The Neil Adams cover art doesn't quite depict the story inside, but that's typical. But it was certainly more dynamic than the interior art. As far as Superboy starring the Legion of Superheroes issue, the cover says the Gala 200th issue, but Starfinger's plot is so ridiculous in this. I discussed this a bit in the Legion Project podcast, episode 29, if you want to go listen to that. However, we are treated to the wedding at the end of Bouncing Boy and Duo Damsel, so it is a gala in that sense. Superman family. All of the vignettes in this are all connected to a future Clark and Lois story. It's their anniversary. There's a reveal that Lois is pregnant again because they have a 16-year-old daughter in the story. I almost chose this issue to discuss because I like that futureness, that future quality, the future story, an Elseworlds, a what if, whatever you want to call it, with Superman and Lois being together and making a family together and all that, what that all entails. But then once I realized the commonality between the two issues I spotlighted, I decided I wasn't going to do that. I will say I did really like the whole Superwoman part of this issue. So if you have a chance to read that, go ahead. Brave and the Bold. This was the final issue of that series before they released Batman the Outsiders to replace it in the line. I thought this was clever. Again, I almost chose this one too, but it didn't quite fit the theme like I wanted. But it uses an Earth 2 villain who takes over the body of his Earth 1 counterpart to go after Batman because he couldn't exact his revenge on his Batman. I thought that was just a really clever revenge tale. So if you haven't read that, I highly recommend that one. Daredevil 200. This was almost on the short list. But the whole "I'm going to kill you, but I'm not a killer" trope kind of knocked it off. It was just kind of, it was all right. I did enjoy seeing, I'm blanking on the guy's art. All right, Green Lantern 200. This was kind of an ending to a run because issue 201 would see the series, I think, be called Green Lantern Corps, and it shifted to focus more or less on one Green Lantern and more on members of the Green Lantern Corps. So an ending and a beginning, so to speak. Was this the first time the Guardians left the Corps? Because, this has happened a few times since then, I know, but I was wondering if in this issue, because I didn't read a whole lot of Green Lantern at this time, so I don't know how much the Guardians, or did the Guardians leave the Corps to fend for themselves like they did here. This story was a nice reminder of the major players in the Green Lantern universe to set up the Corps aspect with this kind of thin plot about the Guardians going off to make babies with the Zamorans, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Wonder Woman 200, it read more like the recent 80th anniversary issues that I have spotlighted in the last year or so. in that we get like this resolution to an ongoing story in the issue 200, and then there's some shorter stories spotlighting the character's history, and we have some pinups. So, was this the template, or did other comic books at that time, were they doing something like this when they reached a milestone issue? I have to figure this out. And then finally, Hellblazer 200. I almost made this a triple issue spotlight. But then, like I said, that would have made 3 issue 200s, and that would mess up my number theme. It's too bad we didn't have a Batman issue featuring Harvey Dent, because that would have been, just perfect. However, Hellblazer 200 was one of the better issue 200s I read. Past events in John's life do play into the overall plot, and the moment in time angle that the adversaries? I can't remember now. was really clever. But the whole issue also sets up the next big conflict in his life, which I need to read, because while I do have all 300 issues of Hellblazer, I only read, I think, up to issue 150 at that time. So I read a bunch of Travis's issues because he was collecting it. And then I jumped on, I think, about issue 75 and got up to 150. But then after 150, I have not read much of those issues. So at the very least, I have 50 issues to go between when I stop reading and this issue. So I will have to go read those and figure out how all this ties together. And then, of course, what comes next, finding out that. So that'll be fun. That'll be fun. Okay. What did you think of these issue 200 comic books, the Justice League of America and Amazing Spider-Man? What number 200 issues do you have in your collection that are your favorites, and why? Let me know. Email me, longboxreview@gmail.com. You can also chat with me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at longboxreview. And let me know what you'd like me to read and talk about next. I'd love to hear from you. Before I go, I wanted to let you know that I am selling some of my comic books. I have nearly 3 long boxes of single issues and trade collections to get rid of, just to thin my collection a little bit. These are things that I either don't want anymore for various reasons, or have other issue or other copies. Like I have some DC Showcase black and white collections where I've replaced them with color versions of these things. So things like that. So most single issues I'm selling for $1, and many of them for less than that. And all the trade collections are $5, unless I've specified otherwise in the document that I posted at Longbox Review. I have a sticky post there. It's the very first thing that you'll see, the very first post that you see when you go to longboxreview.com. And there's a link there to a Google Doc spreadsheet that shows everything that I have that I would like to sell. And I will send them to you. If anything appeals to you, let me know. Send me an email. Let me know exactly what you want. If you would like to see some pictures of them, I can certainly do that. I can take some quick photos with my phone and send them to you so you can see the quality. Most of them are in really good shape. Some of them are well read and are not. So, there you go. But the majority of them are in really good shape because I love my comic books and I like to take care of them. So, all right. 200 episodes. Thank you, everyone who listens to the show, who shares the show, who interacts with me. I really appreciate your downloads, your feedback, your shares. If you haven't, whether you're a new listener or a veteran, and you haven't done this, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. I mentioned earlier, what will I do for episode 300? I don't know. Who knows if I'll even make it to episode 300? But that's not me saying I'm going to quit soon or anything like that, because I'm still enjoying this, and I hope you are too. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.